Kill the engine? Show me your license now.
I'm dropping off my wife. What's your reasonable suspicion to detain me?
Step out of the Tahoe, hands up, or you're getting pulled out.
Touch my vehicle or that lockbox and you're seizing federal property on camera.
The dashboard camera of the airport shuttle bus behind them captured the entire sequence, a silent digital witness to a career suicide in progress. It was 10:15 on a Tuesday morning. The sun was already baking the asphalt of the departures lane, and Marcus Thorne had absolutely no intention of ending his day in a holding cell. He was 56 years old, a man who moved with the heavy, deliberate gravity of someone who had seen the darkest corners of the underworld and lived to file the paperwork. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't trembling. He was the assistant special agent in charge for the Drug Enforcement Administration's Northeast Division, a man who managed multi-agency task forces and signed off on wiretaps that brought down cartels. And right now he was just a husband dropping his wife off for a girls' trip to Charleston. Before we get into the details of how a 24-year-old rookie officer managed to destroy his own life in under 20 minutes, I need you to do something for me. Go down to the comments section right now and tell me, have you ever been judged solely on the car you drive or the way you look? I want to know your story. And if you believe that a badge shouldn't be a shield for incompetence, hit that subscribe button. You need to see how this plays out. Marcus had pulled his black Chevrolet Tahoe to the curb at Terminal B. It was a government-issued vehicle but unmarked, equipped with a hidden light package and encrypted radio. Yet to the untrained eye, it looked like just another high-end SUV. He put the car in park, leaving the engine running so the air conditioning would keep the cabin cool for the few seconds it took to say goodbye. Beside him, Sarah Thorne, his wife of 30 years, was checking her purse for her boarding pass. She was a retired school principal, a woman of immense grace and patience dressed in a linen travel suit. "Call me when you land." Marcus set his voice a deep rumble that usually commanded silence in briefing rooms. "I will. Don't eat frozen dinners all week, Marcus. There's lasagna in the fridge." Sarah smiled, leaning over to kiss his cheek. It was a mundane, beautiful moment of domestic normalcy. Marcus watched the rearview mirror checking traffic out of habit, a survival mechanism burned into his neural pathways after 3 decades in federal law enforcement. That's when he saw him. Officer Kyle Braden was striding toward the Tahoe. Braden was young, fresh-faced, with a haircut that was too tight, and a uniform that looked like it had been tailored to emphasize biceps that hadn't seen much real work yet. He was walking with that specific strut rookie cops adopt when they're trying to convince themselves they own the pavement. Braden didn't wave or tap the glass. He slapped the rear fender of the Tahoe with the flat of his hand. The sound was a sharp thwack that made Sarah jump. "What in the world?" Sarah asked, looking back. "Stay put," Marcus said, his eyes narrowing. He rolled down the window as Braden marched up to the driver's side door. The officer's hand was resting near his holster, not gripping it, but hovering in that red zone of readiness that signaled aggression. "Move it along," Braden barked, not even looking Marcus in the eye initially. "This is for loading and unloading only. No idling. No soliciting fares." Marcus looked at the officer. He saw the name tag K. Braden and the pristine condition of his duty belt. "I am unloading, officer. My wife is catching a flight. Will be 30 seconds. Braden finally looked down into the cab. He saw a black man in a polo shirt behind the wheel of an expensive tint-windowed SUV. He saw a well-dressed woman in the passenger seat. And in Braden's mind, which was seemingly operating on stereotypes from 1985, the math didn't add up to law-abiding citizen. It added up to unlicensed livery driver or drug dealer dropping off a courier. "I said move it." Braden snapped his voice, rising so that people on the sidewalk turned to look. "And I want to see your hack license and chauffeur's permit. You guys think you can just clog up the lanes with these gypsy cabs?" Marcus felt that familiar coldness settle in his chest. It was the same feeling he got right before a raid team breached a door. "Officer Braden," Marcus said, keeping his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel perfectly visible. "This is a private vehicle. I am not a livery driver. I am dropping off a family member. I am in compliance with the posted signage." "Don't get smart with me," Braden said, stepping closer, leaning his forearm on the door frame, invading the space. "I smell attitude. And usually where there's attitude, there's something else. Turn off the engine." The noise of the airport terminal seemed to drop away for Marcus Thorne. The whoosh of jet engines and the rattle of luggage carts became background static. His entire focus narrowed to the young man standing less than 2 feet from his face. Marcus had taught courses on the Fourth Amendment at Quantico. He had written policy reviews on de-escalation tactics. He knew the law better than he knew the back of his own hand, and he knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't a traffic stop anymore. It was an ego contest initiated by a man who didn't know he was picking a fight with a mountain. "Turn off the engine." Braden repeated, his hand now fully resting on the grip of his sidearm. Marcus didn't flinch. He slowly reached for the ignition, narrating his movements. "I am turning off the vehicle as requested, officer. My hands are returning to the steering wheel." The engine died. The silence in the cab was heavy. "Driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance," Braden demanded. "Officer," Marcus said, his voice level and devoid of fear, "I am happy to provide my identification. However, I want to be clear. You have detained me. For a detention to be lawful under Terry v. Ohio, you must have reasonable articulable suspicion that a crime has been committed, is being committed, or is about to be committed. What is your reasonable suspicion?" Braden blinked. He hadn't expected a citation of Supreme Court case law from a man in a polo shirt. "My suspicion is you're operating an illegal taxi service and refusing to obey a lawful order. Now give me the ID or I'm pulling you out of that car." "Loading a passenger at an airport is not a crime," Marcus said, reaching slowly for his wallet in his back pocket. "And asserting my rights is not refusal to obey. I am complying under duress." "You lawyers are all the same," Braden sneered, snatching the license Marcus held out. He didn't look at it closely yet. He was too busy scanning the interior of the car, looking for something, anything. His eyes darted around the clean leather interior, the dashboard, the center console. "Sarah," Marcus said softly, not turning his head. "Film this." Sarah had already retrieved her phone. She didn't make a scene. She simply held it against her chest, the camera lens peeking out, recording audio and video of Braden's profile. "Who's she?" Braden asked, pointing a finger at Sarah. "That is my wife," Marcus said. "She doesn't share your last name on the flight manifest, does she?" Braden asked, throwing out a fishing line, trying to catch them in a lie he invented in his head. "She does, actually. Mrs. Sarah Thorne." "Would you like to see her ID as well? Even though she is a passenger, and you have no legal basis to demand it unless you suspect her of a crime." Braden's face flushed a blotchy red. He was losing control of the interaction. He had expected submission. He had expected begging. Instead, he was getting a lecture. The crowd on the sidewalk was growing. People were stopping to watch. A man in a business suit paused, frowning at the officer's aggressive posture. "You know what?" Braden stepped back, needing to reassert dominance. "You fit the description of a suspect involved in a theft from the parking garage earlier. Black male, 50 to 60, driving a black SUV. Marcus almost laughed. It was the oldest trick in the book, the phantom suspect. "Really?" Marcus asked. "And did this phantom suspect also have a vanity plate? Or are you manufacturing probable cause on the fly because you realize you've made a mistake?" "Step out of the vehicle," Braden ordered. "Right now." Under Pennsylvania versus Mims, an officer can order a driver out of a vehicle for safety reasons during a lawful stop, Marcus recited. "But this stop was never lawful, officer. You are compounding a Fourth Amendment violation." "I said get out," Braden yelled, his hand tightening on his weapon. And keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus looked at Sarah. It's going to be okay. Just keep recording. Do not say a word to him. Do not answer his questions. I know the drill, Marcus, she whispered, her voice shaking slightly but her hand steady. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt. He opened the door. He rose to his full height. Marcus was 6'2", broad-shouldered, a man who kept in shape. Braden, who was maybe 5'10", had to look up. The physical dynamic shifted instantly. Braden took a half-step back, intimidated by the sheer presence of the man he was harassing. Turn around, Braden commanded. Face the vehicle. The heat radiating off the black SUV was intense, but it was nothing compared to the heat of the situation. Marcus placed his hands on the roof of his truck, feet spread apart. He knew the posture. He had arrested hundreds of men. He knew the humiliation of standing there while strangers walked by, judging, assuming the worst. He felt the eyes of the travelers' mothers holding children's hands, tighter businessmen looking away nervously. To them, he was a criminal. To Braden, he was a trophy. Am I under arrest, officer? Marcus asked, his voice projecting clearly for the microphone on Sarah's phone. You're being detained for investigation, Braden said, moving in to pat him down. His hands were rough, slapping against Marcus's ribs, checking his waistband. You got any weapons on you? Needles, knives, guns? I have no weapons on my person, Marcus said carefully. He did not mention what was in the lockbox under the passenger seat. Not yet. That was federal property, and this rookie had no right to touch it. Braden finished the pat-down and found nothing but a wallet and a pack of gum. He was frustrated. He had escalated this stop based on a gut feeling that was really just bias wrapped in a uniform, and now he was coming up empty. He needed a win. He needed to find something to justify the scene he had caused. I'm going to search the vehicle, Braden announced. Marcus turned his head slightly. I do not consent to any searches. You have no probable cause. You have no warrant. If you enter my vehicle, you are violating my civil rights, and you will be held personally liable. I smell marijuana, Braden lied. It was the standard catch-all, the magic words that used to open any door. You do not, Marcus said firmly. I have never smoked in my life. My wife is a retired principal. That is a fabrication officer, and it will not hold up in court. We'll see about that, Braden sneered. He walked around to the passenger side. Ma'am, get out of the car. Leave the purse. Sarah looked at Marcus. He nodded once. She stepped out, clutching her phone to her chest, keeping the camera lens trained on Braden. I said leave the purse, Braden barked. She is taking her personal property, Marcus intervened. Unless you are arresting her, she is free to take her belongings. Braden ignored him and dove into the car. He wasn't searching methodically. He was tossing it. He opened the center console, throwing charging cables and napkins onto the seat. He opened the glove box, scattering insurance papers. He was desperate. He was sweating. He knew he was in deep, and the only way out was to find something illegal. Marcus watched him memorizing every violation. Unlawful detention, unlawful search, fabricated probable cause, intimidation. The list was growing by the second. Hey. Braden's voice changed. It went up an octave triumphant. What do we have here? He was reaching under the passenger seat. He pulled out a heavy black steel lockbox. It was secured with a biometric scanner and a heavy-duty key lock. It was clearly not a consumer-grade item. It looked government-issued. Officer, Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. That is a secured federal container. You do not have the authority to open it. Put it back. Braden stood up, holding the box. He grinned. Federal container. Yeah, right. More like a drug stash. What's in here? Old man cash product. I am warning you, Marcus said, and for the first time his calm cracked just a fraction, revealing the steel beneath. If you force that box open, you are committing a felony. That is property of the United States government." "You're full of it," Braden said. He walked back to his patrol car, which was parked behind the Tahoe. He pulled a pry bar from his trunk. "Don't do it, son," Marcus said. "I'm trying to save your life here." "Save your breath," Braden said. He wedged the pry bar into the seam of the lockbox. The sound of metal screeching against metal was excruciating. It echoed off the concrete pillars of the terminal overhang. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, but she kept filming. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second, exhaling slowly. The idiot was actually doing it. He was breaking into a DEA supervisor's secured firearm transport box in broad daylight. With a loud crack, the lock mechanism gave way. The lid popped open. Braden looked inside, expecting stacks of cash or bags of white powder. Instead, he saw a Glock 19 service weapon with a mounted light. Next to it were 2 spare magazines loaded with hollow points, and nestled in the custom-cut foam was a leather wallet with a gold badge embedded in it. Braden froze. He picked up the wallet. The sun caught the gold shield. It read, "Department of Justice, Drug Enforcement Administration, Supervisory Special Agent." Next to it was the photo ID. Marcus Thorne's face. Expiration date 3 years from now. Clearance level top secret. Braden stared at the badge. Then he looked at the gun. Then he looked at Marcus. Any rational officer, any veteran would have stopped right there. They would have walked over, handed the box back, apologized profusely, and prayed they didn't get fired. But Braden wasn't rational. He was deep in the grip of cognitive dissonance. His brain couldn't accept that the black man he had just harassed, insulted, and accused of being a drug dealer was actually a high-ranking federal agent. It didn't fit his worldview, so his brain rejected the evidence. "Fake," Braden muttered. Then louder, "Fake." He walked back to Marcus, his face twisted in anger. "You think you're slick. You think you can carry a stolen police gun and a fake badge and fool me?" Marcus stared at him in genuine disbelief. "Officer, look at the micro-printing on the ID. Look at the serial number on the weapon. Call dispatch and run the badge number." "I'm not calling anyone," Braden yelled. "You're under arrest, impersonating a police officer. Possession of a stolen firearm. Possession of an unregistered weapon." "It is a federal service weapon," Marcus said, articulating every syllable. "I am a federal agent. You are making a catastrophic mistake. Turn around." Braden grabbed Marcus's arm and twisted it behind his back. He didn't use the standard technique. He used force, wrenching the shoulder. Marcus grunted in pain, but didn't resist. He knew that any resistance would be met with a taser or worse. "You are hurting him," Sarah cried out, stepping forward. "Back off or you're next," Braden screamed at her, pointing a finger. He slapped the handcuffs on Marcus's wrists. He tightened them too much, the metal biting into the bone. "Double lock the cuffs, officer," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "That is procedure." "Shut up." Braden shoved Marcus toward the patrol car. "You don't tell me procedure. You're a criminal. You're going to jail." He opened the back door of the cruiser and pushed Marcus inside. Marcus had to duck his head to avoid hitting the frame. The back seat was hard plastic, cramped, and smelling of stale vomit and disinfectant. "Sarah," Marcus said as the door was closing, "call the SAC. Call the number in my contact list under boss. Tell him I'm at the airport precinct." "I'm calling right now," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face, phone pressed to her ear. Braden slammed the door. He walked back to the Tahoe, grabbed the broken lockbox, the gun and the badge, and threw them onto the passenger seat of his cruiser. He got in the front, breathing hard, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He thought he had just made the bust of the century. He thought he had caught a master criminal. He looked in the rearview mirror. Marcus was sitting upright, his face a mask of stone. "You have the right to remain silent." Braden began reciting the Miranda warning, breathless and rushed. "I know my rights," Marcus interrupted calmly. "Better than you do. And right now, I'm exercising my right to watch you destroy your future. Drive the car, officer." The drive to the airport police station was short, maybe 5 minutes, but the silence inside the cruiser was heavy enough to crush a submarine. Braden was driving with one hand, his other hand drumming nervously on the steering wheel. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a creeping, gnawing doubt. He kept glancing at the badge on the seat next to him. It looked real. It felt heavy. The gold didn't look like cheap plating, but he pushed the doubt away. No, he told himself. Guys like him don't have badges like this. It's a good fake. That's all. In the back seat, Marcus Thorne was doing math. He was calculating the settlement damages: unlawful arrest, excessive force, defamation, false imprisonment, assault, battery, deprivation of rights under color of law. The city was going to bleed money. But money wasn't what Marcus wanted. He wanted Braden's badge. He wanted to make sure this kid never held authority over another human being as long as he lived. "Officer Braden," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the silence. "You have exactly 3 minutes before we arrive at the station to call your supervisor and explain that you have detained a federal agent. If you do that, maybe you keep your pension." "I told you to shut up," Braden said, but his voice lacked the earlier fire. It sounded brittle. "I am the assistant special agent in charge for the Northeast Division," Marcus continued, ignoring the command. "My badge number is 4492. The weapon is a Glock 19 serial number USG 8829. It is registered to the Department of Justice. When we walk into that station, you are going to be surrounded by people who know exactly who I am, and you are going to be the loneliest man in the room." "If you're a Fed," Braden scoffed, trying to convince himself, "why didn't you lead with that?" "I tried," Marcus said. "You didn't listen. You saw a black man in a nice car and you stopped listening. That's why we're here." Braden turned into the precinct lot. He parked the car aggressively, jerking to a stop. He got out, grabbed the evidence, the gun, and the badge, and marched to the back door. He hauled Marcus out. "Let's go. Move." He paraded Marcus through the back entrance of the station. It was a busy morning. Officers were typing reports, drinking coffee. They looked up as Braden entered with his prisoner. Marcus walked with his head high. He didn't look like a prisoner. He looked like a general inspecting the troops despite the handcuffs. He made eye contact with a few of the older officers. He saw the confusion in their eyes. They saw the suit, well, the polo and slacks, the demeanor, and then they saw the rookie pushing him. "Booking," Braden announced to the room. "Impersonating an officer. Illegal weapons possession." He steered Marcus to the processing desk. Behind the high counter sat Sergeant Miller. Miller was 55, a dinosaur with white hair and a face carved out of granite. He had seen it all. He was sipping coffee and reading a report. "What you got, Braden?" Miller asked without looking up. "High roller," Braden bragged. "Pulled him over at Terminal B. Fake federal ID, stolen service weapon, resisted arrest." Miller looked up. He looked at Marcus. His eyes widened slightly. Then he looked at the items Braden slammed onto the counter. The gun, the badge. Miller reached out and picked up the wallet. He opened it. He stared at the credentials. He ran his thumb over the holographic seal. He felt the weight of the badge. He looked at the photo. Then he looked at Marcus. Miller's face went pale. He stood up slowly. "Braden," Miller said, his voice very quiet. "Did you verify these credentials?" "I know a fake when I see one, Sarge," Braden said, puffing his chest out. "Look at the font. And the guy? Please, he's a driver." Miller didn't answer. He picked up the phone on his desk. He punched in a number from memory, the direct line to the regional federal dispatch. "This is Sergeant Miller Airport Police. I need to verify on a badge number 4492. Name Marcus Thorne." There was a pause. The room went silent. Even the typewriters seemed to stop. Braden was starting to sweat now. He looked at Miller's face. Miller nodded at the phone. Yeah, I see. Roger that. Thanks. Miller hung up the phone. He placed it gently in the cradle. He looked at Braden with an expression of pure pity mixed with disgust. Unlock him, Miller said. What? Braden asked. Unlock him, now. Sarge, he's a suspect. He is the assistant special agent in charge of the DEA, you absolute moron. Miller roared, his voice shaking the walls. Take the cuffs off him before the FBI kicks down my front door. The silence that followed Sergeant Miller's scream was absolute. Every officer in the bullpen stopped moving. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Braden stood frozen, the keys to the handcuffs in his hand, his mouth slightly open. His world was collapsing. The certainty, the arrogance, the bias, it all shattered in an instant, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. I thought, Braden stammered. Unlock me, Marcus said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried more authority than Miller's shout. Braden's hands were shaking so badly he couldn't find the keyhole. He fumbled, scratching the metal. Give me the keys, Miller barked, vaulting over the desk. He snatched the keys from Braden's trembling fingers and unlocked the cuffs himself. Agent Thorne, Miller said, stepping back, his posture stiff. I apologize. I truly apologize. I don't know what... Marcus rubbed his wrists. There were deep red indentations where the metal had dug in. He ignored Miller and turned his gaze slowly to Braden. The rookie was backing away, looking like a child who had broken a priceless vase. You broke into a federal lockbox, Marcus said, his voice calm and deadly. You seized a federal firearm. You kidnapped a federal agent, and you did it all on camera. I didn't know, Braden whispered. You didn't look like... Like what? Marcus stepped closer. Like a federal agent? What does a federal agent look like, Officer Braden? Do they look like you? Or do they look like anyone who passes the background check, the academy, and spends 30 years serving their country? Just then, the double doors of the precinct burst open. 2 men in suits ran in, followed by the chief of airport police, a man named Henderson. Where is he? Henderson demanded. He spotted Marcus and hurried over, his face flushed. Agent Thorne, Henderson said, extending a hand that Marcus did not shake. My God. We just got a call from the DOJ. Your wife called the SAC. This is a massive misunderstanding. This is not a misunderstanding, Chief, Marcus said, keeping his hands at his sides. This is a civil rights violation. This is a Fourth Amendment disaster. And this, he pointed at Braden, is a liability you should have dealt with a long time ago. Henderson looked at Braden. Get in my office. Now. Surrender your weapon and your badge to Sergeant Miller. Chief, Braden started. Now! Henderson screamed. Braden unbuckled his gun belt. It fell to the floor with a heavy clatter. He placed his badge on the desk next to Marcus's. The contrast was stark. The rookie shield next to the gold federal badge. Marcus picked up his property. He checked the weapon to ensure it was cleared, then holstered it. He put his badge in his pocket. I want the Bodycam footage, Marcus said to Henderson. I want the dash cam. I want the booking logs. And I want them preserved immediately. If a single second of footage goes missing, I will have this entire department under federal consent decree before the week is over. You'll have it, Henderson promised, wiping sweat from his forehead. We'll cooperate fully. Agent Thorne, can we discuss this in my office? Perhaps we can resolve this. There is nothing to resolve, Marcus said. The resolution will come when my lawyers serve you the papers. He turned to leave. He stopped at the door and looked back at Braden, who was slumped in a chair, head in his hands. You have the right to remain silent, Marcus said to the room. I suggest you use it. He walked out of the station into the bright midday sun. An unmarked black SUV was already waiting for him at the curb his team had arrived. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. Marcus didn't just go home and forget about it. He couldn't. He thought about every young black man who didn't have a gold badge in his pocket. He thought about what would have happened if he had been a mechanic or a teacher or a nurse. He would be in a cell right now, charged with resisting arrest and weapons possession, his life ruined by a lie. 3 days later, the lawsuit was filed. Thorne versus City of, city name et al. It was 50 pages of legal devastation. It detailed every violation, cited every precedent, and demanded damages that made the city comptroller faint. But the real damage happened when the video leaked. Sarah's phone recording, combined with the Bodycam footage released under a Freedom of Information Act request, hit the internet. The video was undeniable. It showed a calm, professional man being berated, harassed, and assaulted by an out-of-control officer. It showed the moment Braden broke the lockbox. It showed the moment he called the federal badge a fake. The public outrage was instantaneous. The hashtag Fire Braden trended globally. The airport police phone lines were jammed for weeks. Protesters gathered outside the precinct. Chief Henderson tried to do damage control, but it was like trying to stop a tsunami with a bucket. The Department of Justice opened a civil rights investigation into the department's stop and frisk practices. They found a pattern. Braden wasn't an anomaly. He was a symptom of a culture that allowed bias to fester. Officer Kyle Braden was fired 3 weeks after the incident. The union didn't even fight it. The video was too damning. He was stripped of his certification, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. He tried to do interviews claiming he was following his training, but every time he opened his mouth, he dug the hole deeper. The internet was merciless. He became a meme, a symbol of incompetence and racism. The settlement came 6 months later. The city paid Marcus Thorne $1.2 million to settle the civil rights lawsuit. They also agreed to a complete overhaul of their training procedures, mandatory implicit bias training, and the implementation of an early intervention system for problem officers. Marcus took the check. He didn't buy a boat. He didn't buy a vacation home. He started a legal defense fund for people who had been wrongfully detained at that same airport. He used the money to give a voice to the people who didn't have his badge. He returned to work the next Monday. He sat at his desk, looked at the framed photo of Sarah, and went back to fighting cartels. But things were different now. Every time he saw a local cop, he looked a little harder, and they looked at him with a little more respect and a little more fear. 2 years have passed since that day at Terminal B. The airport has new signs now. They have new policies. The officers there are polite, almost painfully so. They know that you never know who is behind the wheel of that black SUV. Kyle Braden works in a warehouse now, driving a forklift. He keeps his head down. He doesn't assert authority over anyone. He learned the hard way that power is a privilege, not a right, and it can be taken away much faster than it is given. Marcus retired last month. He spent his final days on the job mentoring young agents, teaching them that the badge is heavy, not because of the metal, but because of the responsibility. He was sitting on his porch yesterday watching the sunset with Sarah. "Do you think it made a difference?" Sarah asked him, handing him an iced tea. Marcus took a sip. He thought about the letters he gets from strangers. He thought about the young officers who have told him they watched the video in the academy and learned what not to do. "It made a difference for the next guy," Marcus said. "And that's enough." But here is the hard truth, the thing that keeps Marcus up at night. He survived that encounter because he was him. He survived because he knew the law, because he had the credentials, and because he had the connections. What happens when it's your son? What happens when it's your father? What happens when it's you, and you don't have a badge to save you? Bias doesn't care about your resume until it's too late. The system worked for Marcus, but only after it tried to crush him. We have to ask ourselves, why did it take a federal badge to get a police officer to follow the law? Why wasn't "I am a citizen" enough? That is the question we need to answer. Thank you for reading this story. It's a heavy one, I know, but it's a necessary one. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think the punishment for Officer Braden was enough, or should he have faced criminal charges for what he did? And what would you have done if you were in Marcus's shoes? Let's talk about it. And please take care of each other out there. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that matter.